One way to think about the fragility of humanity and the holiness of God is through the U.S. space program. Right? It was announced, I think, last year that the United States has decided to go back to the moon. Some of you in this room don't think we went to the moon in the first place, and that's a whole nother conversation. And I'll let you, that's okay. But they've declared they want to go back. And that means going into outer space. And so it's interesting because a lot of videos are being made about what does an astronaut get into and how do they prepare for this kind of exposure in outer space. And the whole thing, when you stand back and look at it, it just shows you how fragile humanity really is. Okay, to get ready, a U.S. astronaut will go into quarantine for just a little over 2 weeks. Why? Because they can't afford to get sick. Because the system that they're entering into is so fragile, it requires them not to be sick or to contaminate anyone else. Right? So they go through a process where they purify themselves. Okay? And then when they go into quarantine, they're doing all this training, and they've been building up to this. Eventually, on the day of the launch, they get into their spacesuit, and then they get into a space shuttle. And what's interesting is just the spacesuit alone shows you just how fragile we are. They get into a spacesuit because if they go into outer space without it, one, they won't have the oxygen required to fill their lungs and distribute in their blood and go to their muscles and give them brain function. So they very stable oxygen. They can't have too much or too less. Then you have atmospheric pressure. They have to have a suit that maintains the right pressure because there's a certain amount of pressure on Earth, but then when they leave Earth's atmosphere, there's not enough pressure. And so they would absolutely dissolve into nothingness in outer space. So they have to have a suit that keeps them with the right pressure, also the right temperature. They can't be too hot, too cold. Very Goldilocks in nature. And so they have to have just the right temperature, the right oxygen, the right pressure, as well as it's a fully integrated nutrition system complete with kitchen and porta potty in the suit. And this is just to spend 1 minute in outer space. And so you start to go, well, it seems like unfair that they'd have to go through all that. But the reality is you're not going to argue with outer space. It is what it is. It's not going to change. You can be upset about it. You can be excited about it, but it doesn't matter. You have to wear a suit to go in it because it is what it is, and we are fragile. And if we decide that we don't want to do it that way, it'll destroy us. And so everyone who goes into outer space is like, okay, fine, I'll put on the suit. Right? Because they know better. And there's a similar idea that what this regular engagement in this, what he calls a regulations for worship, in this earthly place of holiness, was to regularly demonstrate the holiness of God, but also the weakness and limitations of humanity, but also a God who desires to still be with a weak and broken humanity. And so this system was set up to give regular reminder to this reality. And basically, when we start to look at verse 11, he says, "But when Christ appeared as a high priest of the good things that have come, then through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is, not of this creation, he entered once and for all into the holy places, not by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by means of his own blood, thus securing an eternal redemption." Basically, what he's saying is, if you understand it rightly, Jesus Christ has come and you don't need a spacesuit anymore. You can literally just fly up in outer space, go around the sun, go to Mars. You have full opportunity to fly through space without hindrance, without suit, without need of oxygen. And you're not going to get too hot, too cold. You just don't need the suit anymore. Because he has made this available. Access to space or to God has now been freely made because he went through and he wore the suit and he did all the stuff. And eventually has now, through his blood, covered you, so now you can do all of that through him.